Hello and good evening. On behalf of Carnegie Mellon University and all of the organizers of tonight's event, welcome to this year's Living Legacies Black History Month keynote address. My name is Brittany Claude, and I'm a first-year MBA and Master's of Science in Public Policy and Management student here at Carnegie Mellon. I am also the Vice President of the Black Graduate Student Organization. As a Black graduate student at one of the nation's premier universities, at the helm of technology, innovation, and progress in social entrepreneurship, I am mindful and thankful of the sacrifices that have been made before me so that I and millions of students of color can enjoy an education, an opportunity to pursue my American dream, to speak freely, to befriend and learn from students all over the nation and the world, and to live the promise of those like Ernest Green, our fathers, grandmothers, and great-great-grandfathers that struggled so that we wouldn't have to. A chance to simply learn in the same classroom. To me, Black History Month is one moment of many to acknowledge, reflect, and celebrate these sacrifices. Where we have come, where we are now, and the work that still needs to be done. We are very fortunate to have a living legacy here with us tonight, a walking remembrance of the struggle for equality and of the strength of our never-ending faith in justice and hope for the future. Thank you so much for joining in the celebration of Living Legacies in Black History Month at Carnegie Mellon University. Once again, welcome, and please enjoy tonight's event. I'd like to bring Kamal to the stage to introduce our speaker.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kamal Ibrahim, and I'm a senior here at Carnegie Mellon University, majoring in mathematics. I'd like to thank those who came out to support us, and I also like to thank those who support us remotely. Thanks to Chanel, too, for her efforts in helping us organize this event. I mean, it's just amazing how a small idea can go so far with the right people and the right push. Tonight, I've been given the privilege and the honor to introduce our guest keynote speaker, a man who, in the face of extreme hardship and extreme controversy, pulled himself into a better way of living. He was the oldest of one of the oldest of the Little Rock Nine, and one of the youngest to receive the NAACP Springer Medal. In 1999, he and other members of the Little Rock Nine were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, which is the highest honor given to any civilian, by President Bill Clinton, sorry. After being the first African American to graduate under the not new now, but the Supreme Court ruling in 1958, he went on to pursue higher education and also continue to fulfill his mission in supporting our communities. Ladies and gentlemen, may we please welcome Mr. Ernest Green.
Thank you very much, Kamal. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. And so far, I've had an enjoyable time at Carnegie Mellon. I'd like to spend some time this evening talking both about the past and what's been impressive. I had dinner tonight with a group of young people that I think are going to go places, various majors in science and technology and engineering. And it made me feel that the struggle that we had in Little Rock was on point, that we were in the right direction and going to the right place. Dr. King talked about his dream, and you know that trying to bring this dream closer to coming true is really the struggle that this country has had to deal with. But sometimes in order to look ahead, we need to look back. You read about the day when I, as a teenager, one of 9 scared teenagers walking up the steps of Little Rock Central High School. And I'll talk a little bit about those days, but first I want to go further back. I want to tell you what it was like in a place and a time when people couldn't imagine living the way that you live here in Pittsburgh at Carnegie Mellon. Imagine me when I'm a 6-year-old downtown in a store in Little Rock. It's blistering hot. There was a time before air conditioning, and this audience looks too young to remember that. I needed a drink, headed for the water fountain, but a store attendant blocked my path. I'd made a terrible mistake. I tried to drink at a whites-only water fountain. A grown-up couldn't let that happen, couldn't let a 6-year-old get a drink of water. And while later, my family goes to hear a band concert at a public park in Little Rock, we get to the gate, a policeman stops us, said, "This is off limits to colored people." Here I am with my father, who fought for this country in France in World War I, turned away at a public park. And then there's the story of my grandfather, who thought he would vote in a Democratic primary, had the nerve to show up at a polling place. Not only did they turn him away, but they pulled a gun on him. And then there's the story of my mother. She got a Master's of Education, University of Arkansas, back in 1951. My sister actually remembers the day the postman brought a package with a cap and gown and a diploma, and a letter acknowledging her accomplishments, but that same letter informed her that she would not be welcome on campus to march in the procession. Why? Obviously, she was the wrong color. My sister tells me she would never forget the look of hurt and disgust in her eyes as she crumpled the letter and threw it in the trash. There are those who argued that we had separate but equal systems in Little Rock and other places throughout the South, but we knew differently. We knew when we opened up textbooks given to us only when they were too worn out for the other school. You know some of what happened in Little Rock. You've seen the pictures of that day in '57. 9 of us piled into cars with Jeeps in front, Jeeps in back, and then walked up the steps into Central High School to become his first African-American students. I sometimes get embarrassed when people congratulate me for what I did. You know, ball players like to point out that there's no I in the word team. The same here. Our neighbors, the leaders of our community, our parents, all had a vision of what this would mean. They knew that if we climbed those steps, black people would be a step closer to freedom. Because what happened in Court Square in Montgomery, Alabama, and at Central was well central to the issue that I believe has most plagued America, central to the issue that has caused more turmoil, turbulence, and strife than any other, central to the issue that remains still his greatest social burden, the issue of race. Yes, the Founding Fathers wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." But these same Founding Fathers, Jefferson, Washington, had plantations housing hundreds of slaves. I believe it was racism that sustained slavery, and slavery caused the Civil War. It was racism that 30 years after the Civil War could allow the court to decide in Plessy versus Ferguson that Homer Plessy could not sit in a whites-only railroad car. Why not? Because he had a black great-grandmother. It was racism that sustained the era of Jim Crow, of lynchings, of discrimination in every phase of life, from getting a job to expressing a point of view, certainly drinking from a water fountain. And as you know, education. In 1899, the good governor of Mississippi put it this way: "Education only spoils a good field hand. It's money thrown away." Did I know all that? Sure. But it was only on that day that it sunk in. It was only when we heard the parents screaming at us, jeering at us, chanting to the white students to stay away, only when a monitor got me from my physics class and said the mob might break through the barricades and send us home. That's when I began to see the full dimension of what was wrong. Eventually, you saw the pictures. We got in, took a convoy of soldiers, took soldiers with machine guns mounted on jeeps and paratroopers and helicopters and soldiers with drone bayonets. I was scared, certainly scared stiff. How could you not be scared? The governor of Arkansas, Orville Forbes, said blood would run in the streets of Little Rock. We got bomb threats, phone calls, letters that claimed we would be lynched. After gym class, students would steam up the locker room so no one could see and throw wet towels at Terrence and myself and broken glass. I've never forgotten one time in a lunch line when a boy was calling out insult after insult to Minnie Jean Brown, and I was going to suggest she tell him to stop. Minnie Jean had a better idea. She dumped a bowl of chili on his head. With the perspective of almost a half a century, I have to say I admire that. But I have to admit that when I see those documentaries about that month, there's something that rings false. They focus on the visuals, the troops, the news conferences, the screaming mobs that were part of the story. But maybe most people in Little Rock didn't want to see us hurt, but they certainly wanted to see us fail. They wanted to be able to say that Ernest Green couldn't understand physics. We weren't going to let that happen. Our families weren't. Our community wasn't, and we, the 9 students, especially weren't. Now people say we were heroes. Well, if there was anything heroic about that time, it wasn't just what people saw on the television. It was what went on each night when we opened our books. But when the cameras were off, we worked on. The next month, when Sputnik was launched and the network stopped covering us, we never stopped. Do a math problem as well as anybody else. Write a paper, learn history. We had a lot of help. Yes, our leaders were noble men and women, but the heroes of the Civil Rights Revolution weren't only its leaders. There were also thousands of people going to meetings, walking in demonstrations, registering to vote, leading organizations, and helping with homework. I believe you can't have a revolution unless everyone takes part. I always tell people who honor people like me, as you honor us, remember those not here. You give too much credit to those who are. That's what led to that day in May when Martin Luther King sitting beside my family and I got set to get my diploma, the first African American to graduate from Little Rock Central. Everybody's been clapping as each of the white students walked across the stage. When I walked across the stage, nobody clapped except for my family. But you know what? I felt good anyway. I'd cracked the wall, others would come through it, and that was what I was there to do. Now, I believe there are big revolutions and small ones. How significant was the Civil Rights Revolution our group in Little Rock helped set in motion? I believe it was monumental. It was much more than seeing black and white children sit in the same classroom. It set in motion the forces that would bring forth the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 65 Voting Rights Act, and the 68 Fair Housing Act. And I wish they could have seen what happened over the next 10 years. Brown v. Board of Ed and events like mine did more than integrate schools. They made us ask the question, what else can we do? In fact, you can go all the way to Cairo and see that that question is being asked tonight. There were so many areas: getting served in a restaurant, attending a concert, drinking from a water fountain, getting hired for good jobs. And in the next 10 years, we chipped away. The 1964 Civil Rights Act was the result. A while back, I heard a story from Senator Dale Bumpers, the longtime Arkansas senator. It's also in a book he wrote. He made me realize how things had changed between those who wanted an education and those who blocked the door. Governor Faubus, you remember me mentioning him, the one who predicted blood would run in the streets. He became an ex-governor. He desperately wanted some federal money for some projects he had cooked up. One day he went to visit Senator Bumpers and asked for help. And Bumpers said, well, who's in charge of that money? Faubus looked very sad. He said, Ernest Green. I confess I enjoyed hearing that. It was like I jumped my own bowl of chili on his head. In countless ways, the Civil Rights Movement furthered the fulfillment of American democracy, the ideals the Founding Fathers knew they hadn't achieved. universal freedom, equality, and justice. And you have here so many students from other countries. Most people don't realize, or haven't realized, the global implications to what the movement did. American diplomats saw the Cold War as one we had to fight everywhere. How could they win allies in largely non-white continents of Asia and Africa if our highest court endorsed segregation? In a book entitled The Cold War and the Color Line, it was put this way: American diplomats were relieved that Jim Crow legal sanctions had disappeared. That had some direct effect on many that we may not realize. Seeing the promise of America inspired an African leader from Kenya named Tom Mboya. He started a scholarship program to send rising stars to the United States. One of those stars was a young politician named Barack Obama Sr. You know the story. He came here and married, and his influence and impact we see today. It often pains me to hear people criticize the battles we fought and the movement that it helped spawn. They said the impact was minimal. They said the tactics that shaped it, marching and protesting, are relics of the past. I think many times my dad died when I was 12. Able to come back and see what's happened, he would be awed, as I was at this dinner tonight. When he died, only 13% of African Americans had graduated from high school. Now the number is over 80. He wouldn't think that's minimal. In his day, only 2% had graduated from college. Now the number's over 20%, obviously including his children and his grandchildren. He wouldn't think that was minimal. Today, as I walked through the halls, I saw the job fair. In our community, we're spending almost $1 trillion in the U.S. economy, have black CEOs of American Fortune 500 corporations, close to 30% of the African-American families now, incomes over $100,000. The black middle class has tripled what it was a generation back. Minimal? I don't think so. In his day, there was only one African-American in Congress, no black mayors. Now there are over 40 members of Congress and more than 9,000 African-American officials elected. Not enough, but minimal. My father would not think so. My father and mother and grandparents wouldn't think it was minimal to see that headline on January 20th, 2008, reading, "Obama takes charge." I have to admit, I never imagined that on January 20th, 2009, I would see a man of color standing outside the Capitol in front of 1 million others, as I and many of you were freezing to death. But to hear this man make history by starting out with 4 words, "I, Barack Hussein Obama, do take this oath." People were wearing buttons saying, "Yes, we did." And I was there too, humbled, inspired, amazed that I was in a seat of honor with 4 of my high school classmates because of something we had done over a half a century ago. I thought about my parents on that day, thought about them a lot, because they would have been on that mall on the day this country inaugurated its first African-American president. They would have celebrated, but they wouldn't ignore what's left to do. Because even as Barack Obama was taking that oath, school kids watching on TV in schools as segregated today as they were in the time of Dr. King's death in 1968. And even as he began to speak, high school kids listening, African-American youngsters have SAT scores that are significantly behind their counterparts, white, Asians, and Hispanics. But do these details demonstrate that the Civil Rights Revolution failed? I think absolutely not. Because like the work of the Declaration of Independence, the American Revolution, and the Constitution, the event we experienced was a step on the ladder. What we see today only makes moving to the next step more urgent. Now, how do we level this playing field? I think here is an excellent example. We have to move ahead on economic development. It makes a great difference what government does and who we send to run it. Not just the White House, but the judges and other federal appointments who will be just, making sure people have good health care, a tax system that's fair. We need to move ahead through getting involved in politics. And we need something else. We need great schools and great students. We need many of you in this room to be the ambassadors to bring somebody else along. You know that we live in a multicultural world. Many of you, 20 years from now, the economic powerhouses will be India and China. The internet links all economies. In fact, we are finding out that the internet links a lot of things. That means African Americans who want a bright future have to be as comfortable with a mouse as our generation was with a pencil. Education, I believe, is still the key to opportunity. So I ask all of you, please don't just come away from this day understanding the past better. Come away resolved to make the future better, because the challenges ahead must be solved by you. And the challenges ahead aren't limited to race. You obviously face a much more complex world than the one I faced in 1957. We had never even heard of global warming, but we see the ice caps melting and holes in the ozone, and we cannot allow it. We never heard of the HIV virus, but millions around the world die of it still, and we have to fight it. And here's what might be the most complex issue of all. All the debate going on about immigration these days doesn't change what the Census Bureau predicted, that by the time most of you in this room will be in your mid-50s, the United States will be half non-white. That's right. To look like America, Carnegie Mellon's class of 2050 will be at least half Latino, African American, and Asian. Black, brown, yellow, white, we share these challenges that lie ahead, and we must share the job of finding solutions. Can this country, with its history so divided by race and ethnicity, finally work as a team? And that's why I'm excited about being here. Yes, this is a school that emphasizes excellence and emphasizing inclusion. And you have a school that doesn't shrink, hopefully, from diversity, but as this event and others, you embrace it. How do I know that this future is going to be better for each of us? It's a belief that I have. You know that there were times when I didn't believe people could work things out. I'll tell you the story, continuation of my sister. She gave me some evidence. You remember me talking about my mother and that diploma. My sister was still angry about the injustice done to her. We all were. But none of us had ever tried to do anything about it. And for a long time, we thought the school would just ignore us. And last 2 months ago, my sister tried. She wrote the University of Arkansas, told them my mother's story. She wasn't ignored. We got a letter back from the chancellor, David Gerhardt. He asked us for an opportunity to show the University of Arkansas is a very different institution today than it was in 1951. He asked us what we thought would be a fitting tribute. He said, considering that the family had waited 60 years for this moment, I want to be certain that we do it right. We worked it out, and so very soon, the month of May, my sister, my brother, and I will be on the Razorback campus, this time as welcome guests, while they honor my mother's achievements. And let me reassure you, it doesn't always have to take 60 years. 5 decades ago, a young president named Kennedy got up outside the Capitol on a cold, snowy day, looked over the mall, past the Washington Monument, towards the Lincoln Memorial, and he preached a message of hope. The torch, he said, has been passed to a new generation. And then 2 years later, A hot, sweltering day in August at the Lincoln Memorial, looking out towards the Capitol, another person told us about his dream. The two of them died too young, but their dreams live on. Now it's your turn to carry on the dreams they shared. Yes, at home and around the world. There are those who say you can't succeed. I believe you don't listen to them. They are the voices of despair. You have to go forward. There are times you think you're all alone, and listen to the people who march with you and you go forward. And when there's defeat, and if you live long enough, there will be plenty of defeats. Remember the victories you won, pick yourself up, you have to go forward. And as you do, think of me, a skinny, scared 16-year-old, inspired by Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, taking a chance by walking into a classroom of white kids for the first time. Don't doubt, don't delay, don't despair. Remember your past, shape your future. We may not all be remembered by history like Dr. King and President Kennedy, but we can do something more important. Today, generation after generation, each one passing the torch to those who come after, we can change history. Thank you very much.